Really excited about this one. We have got a conversation coming up about film and particularly the power of film in building communal and cultural narratives. We have an incredible panel made for you. We have Travis Collins in from out of town with Forbes Entertainment. We have local filmmaker Sneak the Poet, filmmaker in New Tulsa, Karina Garcia, as well as our moderator, Colby Ari, who is with Dreamland and OK Pop. Without further ado, welcome to the stage this next panel.
All right, thank you all. Good to see you out here, fam. Thank everybody for coming out. It's great to share the stage with you guys. I've been digging you up on IMDb Pro, checking out your websites and stuff over the last day or two. And so I actually really love this topic. I think it's really fascinating to talk about verbatim the power of film in building communal and cultural narratives. And so what I wanted to do is just let you guys introduce yourselves and then go ahead and tell us kind of what that might mean to you. Karina, if you want to go ahead and start, just tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe what the power of film in building communal and cultural narratives means to you. And if you'd like to stretch it, because I know I will be, so.
No problem. My name is Karina Garcia. I just moved to Tulsa. Hi, everyone.
Congrats, and I'm sorry, but you know.
I like it.
That's what I always hear, yeah.
And to me, culture or like just being who I am and but in my filmmaking, it's really important just because I really didn't see anybody quite like me as any kind of authority figure in film at all. I mean, the only Mexican American, which I am, by the way, but the only Mexican American director that I grew up watching was Robert Rodriguez. You know, he made From Dusk Till Dawn, he made Desperado, and that's kind of like all I really had to look up to and realize, like, oh wow, like this is. Well, first, I get it. It's violent, it's fast, it's action-packed, it's dirty, and it's and I loved it so much. I still do. But that's all I really had, and it was hard to kind of just see myself exploring other areas of it. Like I didn't see any documentaries about people like myself or any kind of like culture that I really just grouped myself in that I could like associate with. So to me, being a Latina filmmaker is pretty important because I want to see like a lot more, you know, and then I just want to see like what other stories like we can tell together, you know. But that's why I'm here.
Has it influenced your work? I mean, does it show up in your work the person that you wanted to be for your younger self, admiring the film industry and film?
It does. I've definitely focused a lot more on writing this year, and I really want to just put, just put it front and center. But more so, just like I want the story to have a Latino sort of like narrative to it, but it's kind of like, no, you're the lead, you happen to be Latino. And so it's not just focused on that. Like so many times I've just seen it's just like, oh, here's a Latino family. The dad's in construction. The mom does housekeeping. I don't want to see, not all of us do, you know? Like, sure, I can cook pretty good, but it's not all I do.
Sure. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your work.
Sure. Let me see. I've been focusing more in like the art department, art director. So you need something, let me know. But I've just been trying to, well, lately let me just say, I'm a better producer than I am like a writer, but I want to just be a much better writer so that I can have a producer look at the work and just say like, yeah, let's run with that, let's go with that. And yeah, I just really want to do more, especially like since I just got to Tulsa.
Sure. And so, Sneak, I wanted to pass it on to you. It's just tell us about you, how you got into production, all the elements of that you're involved with, and kind of what this, the prompt here on this panel means to you.
Yes, my name is Keith Daniels. I go by Sneak. born and raised here in Tulsa. So, north side of Tulsa. It's one of those things where I've always been involved in the arts since I was a kid. I was an actor. I really started off on stage with theater, studied theater in college, and I was really loved the art, but I saw the limitations of the Black actors, and really just didn't want to play a thug or play, bank robber number 2, or just the roles that I saw that were really, it was really discouraging. So I was like, instead, let me find a way to start, adding value to that. So I was like, let me start writing and directing. And I made a very conscious decision to do it, independently. And that's been a struggle within itself. But I feel that early on in my career, I felt like I had to, make Black films in a sense, or culturally Black films, hood films or films that spoke to my people. And as I kind of continued to grow, I realized, well, that's like that's why I got into filmmaking, was to make pieces that I wanted to see Black actors in. Like you said, normal people. Kind of like what the Cosby Show did when it first came out, like seeing a doctor and a lawyer, like, wait, what? And they're Black and they have this big family and like they're going to college, and it's like, creating a different narrative. So now I feel like my films reflect that, and it reflects it in a genre that I didn't think I would be writing, because I'm writing more like, not sci-fi, but kind of like suspense, horror, nerdy, borders the line of sci-fi kind of elements, and it just has these Black characters, and I feel like we need more films like that. So I'm trying to be the filmmaker that, if I was an actor, would I want this role? So.
Okay, we're gonna get to you, Travis, but I'm curious. I really want to drill into this a little bit, but I think there's some really fascinating things in the macro to talk about with the work that I've seen that you've done. But in the micro and kind of in minority communities and kind of how our representation is limited, I think it's really fascinating because, like, there's Mexican American cinema, which has like a golden era. That there was a history of like phenomenal revolutionary tales that were told in black and white that I didn't know about until just a few years ago. And I'm sure that many Mexican Americans just the same don't know about, just like here in Tulsa, so many of us didn't know about the race massacre until, just maybe the last 10 years, even though it's a 100-year-long struggle. And so just the same, you have folks like, Oscar Majo, who created such a huge breadth of work showing Black people in so many different roles, but so many of his films have not been cared for and properly preserved. And so it's really fascinating how we lose parts of our own legacy, parts of who we are, just by way of the this overarching predominantly white Hollywood space. And so I'm just curious if you guys have any ideas on that and how maybe sci-fi and nerd shit, quote unquote, is maybe taking you into that direction, and maybe Karina, wow, what are you producing that's really or whether it's particular genres or particular projects that you're looking for that make you feel as though we're stretching, maybe to the past and into the future, or either or. Oh, sorry, that is for either one of you to hop in on it. Sorry.
I'll say something quick. I will say that, for instance, sci-fi, that's the biggest genre right now of films. That's what Hollywood wants. So it's almost feeding a demand, you know what I mean? But if you see that demand is being filled with McDonald's type of material, you know what I mean? When they just whipping these fast films out like Marvel, we just want to hit you with these junk food. I'm here to give you all right, I can give you that genre, but here's prime steak. Here's the filet mignon. Here's the real restaurant of the film. So it's seeing a demand in that genre and saying, okay, I want to add my flavor to it. I'm gonna add my style, and I see where Hollywood is doing wrong, and I see where some indie projects are doing right, and really just kind of just leveraging that and leveraging myself as an artist to, okay, to make it an impact for me to write films that I can make. You know what I mean? Can I make this film? What's kind of having ideas of $250,000? Is it 40 grand, it's like whatever it is to get it done. So that's kind of how I've been moving.
Projects that I've worked on are same sci-fi right now. We're planning on making a trailer for Children of the Corn, but I mean and a huge pull for me is just like you were saying, like hood movies and horror movies. I don't know why, but they were just like a solid equalizer. Like I want, like some. Well, Friday's my favorite movie because it's just like a story about it's just about a day. It's just how you spend it, and it's just so nice because it's not around trauma. It's not around somebody died. It's not something heavy, which is really like, same. Like I don't want to see another gangster film like that. I don't want to see like another homie, fucking no. I want to see like somebody just having a good time. It happens to be in the hood, but then you see horror, which is like a complete like 180 from that. But it's also a great kind of like equalizer because it's you don't know who's next, and then it's just like the idea is to build suspense and then to just kind of defy expectations. It doesn't know where it's going to lead you. You don't know like who like the enemy is, and a lot of the work that I've helped to produce is very like fantastical. It is very just like outside of any sort of normal kind of like narrative, and I just kind of want to keep doing that because it's just a voice that maybe, or like a story that you wouldn't really expect from maybe like somebody like me, or just I don't know, really. It's like I just really want to keep projecting like this kind of like fantasy and just see that it's possible, that it's like I don't have to stick to a drama, I don't have to stick to a comedy, be like, no, I just really want to show you just like this really fucked up idea that I have, like, won't you watch it?
Okay, so to Travis, please tell us a little bit about the work that you do, who you are, and segue, if you can, into kind of what this prompt means for you.
Certainly, but also really quick on horror. One of the other really great benefits to horror films in particular is very low barrier to entry in terms of cost. So you're able to go and do things at like very, very low budgets, because the really big problem that we have in filmmaking is actually finding people who will fund and distribute films. And so when you can bootstrap it, when you could hire people that you know from your community to go out and do that, that is the opportunity in particular that horror has. Sci-fi is unbelievable. Sci-fi is expensive, right? Like that is lofty. I'd be scared to jump into the sci-fi world. I'd love to write it, but I'd be scared to try and actually produce that. And also, horror is popular for distribution any time of year. Like this industry, especially during COVID, was saved by horror. Horror is super popular, very low to produce, and outsized returns based compared to any other genre. So yeah, love it. For myself, I'm a New York native. I grew up in Brooklyn, went to film school briefly, dropped out of film school, started working in news. Actually, I dropped out of film school, went back, dropped out, went back, dropped out, went back. And then wound up doing news for a really long time, really enjoyed that, and then somehow circularly wound up back in film, where I'm mostly producing documentary work now for a large brand. I work for Forbes, so another big part of entry into that space is working with an established brand and trying to find your way to tell really meaningful stories within an established brand, especially a brand like Forbes, which is very, very much about success. And, Forbes as a company has worked pretty hard in recent years, I'd say, especially in the last 4 to 5 years, to make sure that success looks like something other than 70-plus-year-old white men. And they are. The 30 Under 30 has done a lot in the last 10 years in particular. Still a long way to go, but it does make it a little bit difficult to tell those stories, because when we're going back to talking about culture and, I'm just going to extend that to underrepresented groups. Again, coming from my perspective, where I'm trying to find financing and buyers for distribution, it's unbelievably difficult without a huge celebrity. So unless you have LeBron behind you, like nobody wants to buy that. And so it becomes unbelievably difficult to find either the financing or the distribution. So right now in particular, in this moment in the industry, the obsession with celebrity is very, very difficult. And it feels like the only way to really tell stories about communities is to find, at least in the documentary space, from what I'm finding, is to find those moments of collective trauma. And it does kind of suck to have to tell stories of collective trauma to be able to sell something. But it is a way to give voice to a community. And then if you're lucky, depending on the influence of the buyer, you can really kind of shift that trauma into something positive, but you do have to take people on that journey. But it's difficult.
So I'd like to open it up for like hot takes on this topic, because I think that that's really fascinating. One, on the other hand, I think it's really fascinating how horror is so grounded. I mean, like, by definition of the genre, by all metrics of the genre, everything is pretty just within your setting. Nothing is beyond your neighborhood per se that you can't create the horrors within, because there usually are these things that are happening within or just outside of your neighborhood that make horror what it is. And I mean, like, it cannot be understated, you know, how impactful Get Out was by having, what is it, $1 million budget and making $100 million. So it's like, to be able to shoot in a house, to be able to shoot in a backyard, to be able to shoot on a suburban street at night at that, you know, to just be able to do these very low key shots with no flair, and be able to turn like a scene like sitting on a sofa and being like hypnotized into something that rocks a nation. It cannot be understated. But also I think it's really fascinating that when you touch on the fact that distribution is looking for stories of trauma. And so, like, to my producers, I'm really curious, like, what are you looking for that could maybe buck that trend and maybe attract a distributor or maybe other producers to help, you know, find different avenues for your film? Because, you know, not to throw shade on anyone in particular, but like, I just watched a trailer for a new A24 film. I believe it was called the Intermission, maybe. No, it's about a gay black man that goes into the military. Looks like he has a bad time. Yeah. And so it comes as no surprise. I mean, it looks like it is beautifully shot. It looks like it is an incredibly moving story, without a doubt. And I'm sure I will, and anybody else will enjoy this movie. But I can't help but notice over the last so many years, especially working in exhibition, that so many of our stories that get to a certain scale are of our pain. And so, like, how do we navigate stories of success because I mean, there's still a great narrative arc, undeniably, you know, like there's undeniably, you know, when it comes to reaching certain levels of success, especially as a Black or brown person. But how is it that it's this difficult to get those stories funded and distributed in a meaningful way?
I'll say that this is why it's important for, you know, that film, for example. I really hope a gay Black man who was in the military wrote it or directed it or produced it or had some sort of involvement behind the scenes. Or I mean, I hope that person is also starring in the movie, because it has to have some sort of authenticity to it. It has to, I mean, I don't want to hear somebody's take on what that might feel like. I want to know what that experience is like, you know, like I have an imagination, like I want to know the truth. And in order to get funding for that, like that's a great question. I'd like to know how to do that too. But I think the best thing you can do is just start writing it, and that way that idea is just cemented. Everything that I've written, I just realized, like, I'm not trying to do it so that like hopefully like somebody would buy it. It'd be great, don't get me wrong, but I do want this voice to be heard. Like I do want this voice to just be authentic. And I think an example of that voice just being successful is the show Atlanta, because it is the like black writer, black crew, like he's like, they're directing, they're starring in it, they're writing it, they're producing it, executive producing it. That's really impressive. Like the show Reservation Dogs, same thing. Like I've never seen or heard of like an all native writers room or crew or cast. Like that's just, but that's how it's done. I don't I'm sure that they've been holding on this idea for like a really long time, and then they had this opportunity to finally get on a like platform to share it, and they were ready. They're like, oh yeah, I'm ready for that. Like I have somebody, they're a director, like let's just do that. And I just think you have to just start, and the easiest way to do that is to just kind of write it down, even if it's just like a couple of ideas, even if it is just like a short script. It doesn't even have to be like made, but as long as it's there, you'll know, like you'll find your voice, and hopefully you'll find people who just share that voice, or like, you know what, I read this that you made, like tell me more about it. Like they will be there, they will come. But if you just don't discourage yourself and just start, just no one's looking, why not start? And that's my take. But
I'll give a shout out to Sterling, just because I worked with his brother for a number of years, and I remember when there were ruminations of Res Dogs maybe coming to fruition, and then whenever he had his first day working on set, and the next day we were working together, he was telling me about it. It almost had me in tears. Him talking about working with a nearly all native crew, all native cast, that his brother, who's like a local hero, who's been working on features, year in and year out, had finally manifested, But it's just really nuts to think that I don't know Sterling that well, but to know that he has been hustling for over a decade to make this a reality is just really something. I mean, yeah, you got to put in your 10,000 hours, but it's just really wild that he was making films that really subverted the representation of Native Americans, especially whenever Native Americans make up probably the least represented community in Hollywood as it stands. So it's, to your point, you just got to keep going at it. It's just tough. It's really tough. Tell them about it, Travis.
Yeah, no. It's tough, and to be honest with you, I don't really know the answer in terms of trying to get that funding for the distribution to tell the stories that we want to tell. I partially blame it on the success of True Crime Podcast, which completely kind of like changed the landscape.
We're gonna touch on that.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I think that the main issue is that there is a war among the streamers right now for, you could say eyeballs, you could say subscription, but it's really for attention. It's an attention war. And so what we found through True Crime Podcast is that you have unbelievable user retention. People want to know what the next horror is that's going to be meted out. And so like when you do have something new, when you do have a new show, like they're judging by subscribers and watch time, right? But there's no way to directly attribute Res Dogs to somebody who just signed up for that streaming service. They don't know that. They just know like when you're watching it, did you watch it all the way to the end? Did you binge the season? So what they know is that celebrities, sports stars, musicians, these are the people that people will just show up to watch. And they know that when something is scary, either fictional scary or, and I've always felt very conflicted in this, and this is also true in news, working in news. It's just like we are monetizing in daily news, 24-hour news. We're monetizing people's pain. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Now we couch that in like we're providing a service. We're telling you what's happening in the world, and that service is important. But I've always felt conflicted with it, and now I feel even more conflicted in it when it's entertainment, when it's TV and film. It becomes even more difficult. So how to get people to pay for it? Right now, the only way I've been able to even conceivably do it is to go out and find independent financiers who will then put up the money. You take it out to a festival, you hope that it gets a good buzz, and hopefully somebody picks it up. That's really tough, especially for the artist, for the creator, because when somebody else is financing it, you're going to get fuck all in terms of like your payback. You know, it's just like you hope that that will give you the means so this way you can go out the next time, raise money a little bit easier, maybe get some little bit more money on the upside. But yeah, it's tough. It's really tough right now.
To quickly add on that, I will say it is tough. I do agree. You have to just start making it. I think you put that energy out in the world, whatever film you want to make, that speaks your truth, and make it. And it might not be something that the mainstream want to see, and you just have to really have like, and I really mean is the discipline and the drive to get that vision through. So like, what are you willing to sacrifice, right? So using community, using people around your resources, right? You can get funding out here for things. Are you willing to work with nonprofits to do it? You're right. I worked with some nonprofits recently to gain funding for my short film. Got over $40,000 for it. So it took me a year to do it though. You know what I mean? So are you willing to put a year work for the pages that you wrote? You know what I mean? It's only 15 pages. It's 14 pages. You know what I mean? So it's a short film. But are you willing to put in that discipline? Are you willing to make those connections? And I think one thing you could do is easily look up the grant funding that's going on in your community, right? Look who's on the board, right? And just email them. Set up a meeting with them. Talk to them, say, hey, this is my idea, this is my vision. I just need somebody, when I put it in, can you know what I mean? Do I have your support? You know what I mean? Do that with all of them. Do it with 3 of them. Get the board members on your side. That's the game right there. You really gotta make connections and do that with multiple facets and get your vision through. Because nobody is gonna throw you a bag for a real story out here, man. They really want they want pain. They want it's set up for, we was talking about this kind of upstairs. It's really kind of sometimes set up for you to fail. So you really have to navigate through it. And I think that's one way is tucking in that, okay, I might not get a lot of money off this, but you know, hey, if I collab with this nonprofit and if I go for these few grants and, you know, I can pull in half of the money, maybe I can change the vision just a little, or maybe I can make it into a short and put it through festivals and maybe it gets generated to make it a feature, you know? So that's what I would say.
So yeah, I mean, like I gave Tulsa a little shade earlier, just a teeny bit, but you know, like it's a small city. I mean, it's a big town at best. So it's like it's not hard to reach out to your community and realize that people you know or people who they know the people with all of the money in town. So it's that's a real thing. And I mean, like as somebody who wanted to get into the film industry as a child, just watching too many Criterion discs too young. You know, I realized that like it takes a village to make a film. And people will tell you, yeah, you can shoot anything on an iPhone now. But like, if you really want to make something on the level and you've been watching a bunch of Criterion discs, you know, you want somebody who knows what they're doing with sound. You want somebody who knows what they're doing with the camera. You want somebody who knows how to put pen to paper. And you need a lot of bodies to make the vision come to life. And so it's really interesting though. I mean, like, I'll go back to throwing shade on Tulsa. Like, it's a very large city landmass wise. So getting all of your people together at one time in one place for one vision can be difficult. But again, it's what you're willing to sacrifice to like make that vision come to life and how much it maybe resonates with the very community that you need to work with to elevate it. So like, yeah, really just snaps to that, right? But to touch on distribution, because it's like, it's a tough game. Like you make a short and like, the odds of getting the short to a feature or getting to a point where you could get distribution for it or, you know, make some of your money back is a real gamble. And I feel like a lot of people aren't like, even if they go to film school, aren't told about how distribution really works. And I feel like it's it's fascinating, and like there's a lot of allure, and like, you know, the major festivals, all the distributors are here, they want to buy your film, they want to give you $5 million to like snatch up your film and start playing it at countries around, or at theaters around the country. But like inherently I feel like that's a little problematic. like like if you have a phenomenal story about what it means to be, you know, a Black Tulsan that just wants to be, or you're here and you've made a short that talks about being a Mexican American that does anything but what you've seen Mexican Americans do, like somebody at XYZ distributor like says, oh, that's cool, this is going to fill in some gap in the market, this is going to resonate, and we're going to make a bunch of money off of it. It's kind of, I'm just curious if anybody has any thoughts on that.
I can quickly say it's similar to the music industry. But and to say what you first said, if you make a short, you should not expect to get money from it. You should not really expect to get a feature from it. You should really, hopefully, expect to make more connections from it, and hopefully it garners some success to where people really believe that you're a good filmmaker. You know what I mean? A part of being an artist is getting people to realize like you're an artist. Sometimes it's to get to be known. So if you can make a film and it gets in front of 5,000-10,000 people, you did a good job. You know what I mean? Chalk that up as a win, and your next film aim for 20,000, aim for 50,000 or 30,000. You know what I mean? Keeping raising the bar. I feel like that's how you do it. As far as distribution,
you gotta survive out here. You gotta live.
Yo, so you're not gonna live as a filmmaker. I don't think if you're a filmmaker, you accept that you're either not gonna make a lot of money or find another way to make money. But that's between you and money. And that, like, in your relationship with money is a whole nother topic. So you need to become a disciplined person if you're a filmmaker, a frugal person, to say, hey, do I want to? I know people who's about to drop 30,000 on cameras. You know what I mean? Like these are house and car payments. So it's like, what is important to you? You know what I mean?
It's a lot of weddings.
It's it's a lot. But as far as distribution, I think the avenue that you can take is building an organic community, like I said, and distributing it yourself, starting your own website, putting stuff on Vimeo. Like you might take this for granted, but if you can garner a big following, like you will have leverage when you eventually want to take it to a streaming platform. You're like, look, my last 2 films have garnered 300,000 on YouTube or 300,000 on here. So like, you come with the game with a little bit more leverage. So it depends on how you want to knock down this door, you know?
Yeah, I will say that every experience that I've done that was not for profit, and there were many, but I always walked away with like such a big chunk of knowledge from it, though. You know, it's just like, oh, what's that? I was like, oh, now I know. Like, you get that shot on a dolly track. Oh, how did you get that shot? Oh, the colorist and post-production is what like really did the trick. Or you just learn all areas of it, and hopefully you just find an area that you enjoy doing. Like me, I just wanted to do everything. I wanted to like call the people and say like, hey, if I ask you really nicely, will you let us film inside of your building? And like I wanted to be in charge of like the craft service and stuff, in charge of like styling, costume, producing, like, but then I just kind of narrowed it down, and I realized like, no, I really want to do like art direction, at least for other people. Like I know I want to learn how to like be a better camera person for projects that I know only myself can like capture that, like, but it's still really valuable. Like, well, maybe tomorrow like somebody will see what I did and they'll say like, hey, can you do that for me? And I'll be like, actually, yes I can. And that has led to other jobs too, because I did walk away from all these other ones knowing that like, oh, okay, this is what it takes to do that. I really liked it. Let me learn a little bit more on it. Yeah, I can do that. I know how to do it. And it just makes you like a really well-rounded person. And you realize like, hey, next time I need this to be the budget, even if it's just for art department, even if it is just for wardrobe, but you can actually put value to what it is that you know. And I think that right there is pretty invaluable. You become like just like a really just stronger filmmaker, like Yeah.
Preach, yo, you are preaching. I'm
Back to
sorry.
the positives of Tulsa. Now that the
preaching.
film industry is here, it really gives like a means of sustenance for the people that feel driven to be in this industry independently, making their own visions, but also having opportunities to put in work, on other people's in those other communities that are coming together with all of these skills to build something too. So there's so much to learn by, being in it in every way that you can be in it. And there are so many different jobs to be had in the industry.
So yeah, I mean, there are a couple of different ways of thinking about it. One is like if you're an individual who's trying to express your own art, I think that it does make a lot of sense not to believe that you're going to make money on that. But given what both of them have said very eloquently is there's your art, there's your personal expression, and then there's craft. And your craft is monetizable, right? You could take your craft, you could take that skill that you're learning, especially now that the industry is here, and then be able to go say like, hey, I did this is my art, but it's also my calling card. It's like you could see my skill here, and I could go out to all those other people and say like, hey, I should be paid to do this. It's going to only reinforce my art because I'm going to get better at what I'm doing. So that's one potential outlet for just how you see yourself, and recognizing I'm not just an artist, I'm a skilled tradesperson, right? When I went to film school, like I could have tried my hand at just like being the auteur, being like the writer director. I did lighting. That's what I did. I did art direction. There is no job on a set that I haven't done. And now I'm not on a set at all, except for directing. I've never directed. But everything else on a set I've done. But almost none of that was anything that I would have made personally. I was just like, nah, I wouldn't do this. This wouldn't be my art. But you could do it like that. In terms of distribution, there are lots of ways to self-publish now. And I would play with format. Like maybe you made a 5-minute film. You can find all kinds of different ways to cut that, tell that story. Think about the format that you're pushing it on. You said Vimeo. You can do it on TikTok. You can do it on Facebook. You can do it. You can do a lot of different places. In addition, there are now hundreds of FAST channels. These are free ad-supported television. Some of them are really big. You got things like Roku, and like Roku, like good luck getting on Roku, right? But there are also hundreds of little tiny ones that are just hungry for content. They're going to run some ads on it. You're probably not going to make a ton, but more people are going to watch it. There's no exclusivity there. So if you could get it on 30 of these, you got it on 30 of these. And then the last thing I'll say is just like, oftentimes you could do your own marketing on social media for very, very little money. So I would probably take, when you're putting that budget together, allocate just a little bit of it. So this way you can one other thing, again, industry here, I always make these references back to the podcast space, but like if you want to be found in the podcast space, and I do think that there's some correlation here with film, especially if you're trying to build your name in the community, you need to find those successful people in the community who are going to tout you. So, in podcasts, the only way you're going to find success is like, I have a podcast. Nobody's listening to my podcast. Well, I find the successful podcaster. I become a guest on their podcast. They have a bit of an audience. They plug me, right? So when you could find that person who's doing something either in your local or regional film space, and you could get them to be an advocate for you, not easy. It's not easy. But going back to what you were saying, like reach out, just talk to people, because it does take a village. There's not an individual's medium. You're never going to do it truly alone. So
I want to add to that as far as like resources go, and kind of tying it back to the community prompt here, is that people really understate the power of your like local exhibitor in helping you find a national network. Indie theaters across the country are just a staff of maybe 15 people. And one of those people might really vibe with your vision, and they will go to bat with you. And they know all of the people that run their local festival. They know those distributors personally. There's a big opportunity that's being missed by not networking with local exhibitors. It's really fascinating how the the broader cinema industry has been crumbling pre-COVID. You know, your standard chains, AMC, Cinemark, etc. But your local indie theater is probably has a foundation that is a lot more solid than the standard business plan of making money off of ticket sales for movies. They might actually have more staying power than, I think Regal just filed for bankruptcy recently. Yeah, so I mean, it's just like you have these chains like AMC is a meme. Like it is, the meme is holding it up. Like, and they did a good job with the Nicole Kidman thing. It's really keeping the brand alive. But I mean, in all reality, there are little brick theaters that are like begging for you to come in, and a lot of them as of 2020 are doing better at being more inclusive spaces. So for all of us that are Black and brown, it seems like we have more leverage to take up space in those spaces and to really challenge them to find new ways to support us, which can involve tapping into those broader networks that industry has, which is a lot of personal connections with distributors, so on and so forth, including talent agencies, et cetera, the platforms even. So don't underestimate your local indie. You know, and maybe as we so much time. Yeah, as we kind of wrap up our portion, we'll turn it to questions in the audience, so y'all be thinking about that. Let's talk a little bit more about equity in the film space and how maybe on the local level, on the communal level, we can start to build more support for independent visions, and then maybe how even that might translate to a much bigger like documentary project like your We Work project or something along those lines, which I know is really ultimately probably going to be a drop in the bucket. But if you can imagine, like, just let us know.
What's that?
It's open to everybody though, just the same. And I know we don't have answers, but this is really a stream of consciousness. Last 5 minutes, if you got it.
You know, the way I've always thought about it was always hiring. You know, when I was working on my first films in college, like I hired the kids that I grew up with. That's what I did. I didn't have a way to affect who the buyer was. I didn't have a way to affect who the financier was. So I just hired the people who are around me. It's like, oh, you can give me $10,000? Great. I got like 5 people that I'm going to hire today. They're going to drive the van. They're going to move the furniture. They're like, we're all going to do that, and we're going to like commit ourselves, and we're going to kill ourselves to get this shit done, and then we'll go from there. I think that I'm not a buyer. I have a lot of meetings with buyers, and what I've noticed in the 2 to 3 years that I've been like really digging in with the buyers is that who the buyers are changing. And the weird part about that, it's good. The non-white men, there are far fewer, white men in those rooms. What I don't see is the content particularly changing. There's a little bit of content change, oftentimes built around like, what month is it? And like, look, every drop counts. But I think that as the people who are getting in those rooms, who are getting to buy, start working their way up the career ladder, we're going to hopefully start seeing those changes become manifest. But right now, like the only thing I could truly think of that would help us do that is recommend people, be great advocates for the people in your community that who do great work, and just keep on pushing for that content to be created. You were both saying like it takes years. It takes years. We were talking about Reservoir Dogs, 10 years, right? Like you just keep on pushing until you find your advocate, and hopefully that advocate keeps on moving up the ranks, keeps on hiring people who don't look like them, and go from there.
I'd say in terms of how it can change.
Sure.
Yeah, just keep doing that. Just, you have an idea, share it. you have a voice, like speak up. Like people, you'd be surprised how many people do really want to hear what you have to say. How and like your voice is just really really special to exactly you, and for you to see the changes happen like around you, it really does start with you, and like it takes time, but like good things usually do, or like greater things just take even longer. Like you'd be surprised, because once you have all these things like under your belt, all this background or this experience like under as your foundation, like you're not just ready, you're like more like you're spring loaded for it. And I just always found that those kind of opportunities really do benefit the people who really do have this experience under, beneath, not beneath them, but like as their foundation. And then you're just not as unsure of it. Like I think like the worst thing that you can do is doubt yourself. Don't doubt your vision, don't doubt your voice. This is why I say like write it down, because it's like during days when you're gonna feel low, and those days are there, you're gonna remember like, hey, this is pretty fucking good. Like I want to share this with somebody, I want to see where that is. Like I have to, like, there's a change right there. It's like with you. And for distributors, I guess they'll change. They'll leave their jobs. There will be an opening. Recommend somebody or apply for it yourself. Like so many things I was totally like, I felt underqualified for, but when I got to it, it's like, oh damn, I am more than fucking ready to do something like this. I just had this doubt. I don't know why, but like, I don't know if anybody's ever told you this, but you are an expert at sending an email. That's just anxiety. That's just like nerves, or just like uncooked excitement. And that's all it is. And the same, you're an expert at sending a text message, at answering a phone call. Like you're just doubting yourself for like no real reason except that you forgot you were an expert. And I mean, it gets me through.
Yeah, I say, I think just for one, you have to be active. I think be a part of as many films as you possibly can. Help, and if you don't have any films, then I think those are the perfect times to start making films, and start with your friends, and ask yourself a real good question, especially if you have a vision like, do I want to be a filmmaker, or do I just want to make a film? You know what I mean? Do I just like, if I want to make a film, or if I have this one particular vision or documentary, then yeah, that's a long haul, and that's a long haul grind. But if you are a filmmaker, I feel like the clock is never ending, so I don't think one project will ever define you. So, you can work on a series of projects and there not be your vision up until 5 or 10 years later. And then you're like, okay, I'm ready. I feel like I've learned enough in this craft to say, I have a voice, I have a vision now. It's about, are you passionate about filmmaking? You might not be ready, I'm gonna be honest, ready to produce and direct a full film. You know what I mean? It's gonna take years to understand lighting, to understand sound, to understand actors, just movement, everything, all the little facets of film, and find gravitate to what you like. You know what I mean? You might find that, being on set is not my thing. I love being in the edit room, playing with colors, and I love just color correcting, and I love Da Vinci, and I just want to just do that all day. And boom, you're still a filmmaker. You're helping create a work of art. So it's finding your lane. You might be saying, I can do makeup on film level. You know what I mean? I think I can do that. You know what? I'm gonna try special effects makeup, and really get in and finding a niche genre in it. Because I promise you, there's a spot for so many different talents in film. I mean, from martial arts to horseback riding to I found out with the guys that are driving those cars in your movies you like, what they get paid is ridiculous. So it's it gets harder the more you go up. But when you make yourself a specialist and you make yourself the specialist, like if you become a very good drone pilot, you are crucial now. So it's one of those where find your way, and it might not be I want to be a director off the gate. I want to be the producer or writer off the gate. I'm as a person who wanted it from acting to that, I can tell you it's so tough to really, not that you can't, to jump in, because I came in and going, okay, wow, I have to really learn about the art of storytelling, the art of filmmaking, the art of cinema, how does the language of it. And it's more of like, you're going in school forever. You're going to continue to be learning about films. So study films, make films, find out what you like about films, and jump into being a filmmaker. So.
Thank you. One last thing in terms of like that building of community. It's very important to advocate for the people who are around you, who you know do the good work, but also equally important, watching who you malign. It's like a part of community that we often don't talk about. There are a lot of spots. You know, people are starting to lose their job. You know, there's more equity in hiring now, but a lot of people, it's still a very, very big swath of humans who are applying for a very small number of jobs, and your ego could get in the way when you see somebody else hired. But like, there's a lot of intersectionality between who you are working with, who you are competing against to get that job. So even though you might be like I am the right person for that job, and fuck them for getting that job because I'm the person for that job, you wind up turning against somebody who, if maybe not in your direct community, still has that level of intersectionality with your community. And so just be like very, very careful about who you malign in addition to who you advocate for.
Okay, I'm just curious how many folks might have questions. If you want to just off the top. Okay, so we got one. So I'm often a moderator, but I've been on plenty of panels myself too. So I just wanted to throw in something. Having worked with Sneak a little bit on the Fire in Little Africa documentary, I was in exhibition for just under 7 years. And so I really learned how indie theaters work and how indie theaters communicate with each other, which isn't necessarily often, but they do have their own annual conference. And what we noticed at that annual conference is that there's often a small section of Black and brown folks who are never necessarily the executive director or the founder or the owner of those theaters, but there are artistic directors, or there are programmers, or they have some position that isn't quite having that level of agency to really make any upheavals in the industry. But something that we talked about that just maybe we didn't have really the time or support to really make happen, and I think something that's generally good life advice is to really just like drill down into what makes your vision unique, or who you are unique for any particular position. Because what we had with the Fire in Little Africa, what Sneak and the whole crew had with the Fire in Little Africa documentary, was a story about how a community was using music to heal from a century of trauma left unabated, and how they crafted an album, and the equity that was in the framework behind the album, the curriculum that came from the album, the community coming together for, on the day of the centennial to really make something on the land where it happened. I think it's such a phenomenal story, because the Tulsa Race Massacre isn't something that just happened to Tulsa. It may be the worst of many riots, massacres, etc., but that only helps make a case that this story needs to be told in all of these other brick and mortar theaters that are almost undeniably in a Black or brown neighborhood by way of white flight and the way that cities ebb and flow. So it's like, I see a lot of Black and brown folks, so I hope you're all in the industry. Like, you really have an opportunity to there's a lot of leverage to take your story into so many houses across the country, especially these indie theaters. So find your place in there, make those connections, and really like talk about why you just being matters. Talk about why your community matters, and make space. Own that theater, own that space, because you are owed it. do not understate that. Really step into your self-confidence with sending that email. Step into your ability and your capability as a specialist or someone working to be a specialist, and learn as much as you can in the industry. Like, taking all those odd jobs. I mean, like lighting, you don't think that's going to be a cool thing, but I've dabbled in some lighting work. It's just so cool. Like, I mean, just like color, there's just an infinite, you're never going to stop learning. So just really carry your weight and throw it around, because you are owed it, you deserve it. So with that, if you guys have any other thoughts on that, please. Yeah. Okay, then questions. I know we had someone in the back.
Yeah, I had a computer algorithms seem to determine the majority of the content people see. Those algorithms tend to be biased toward purely just, as you talked about, whether you watched it and how long you watched it for, really, above anything else. It really doesn't matter about artistic quality. It seems like there's a race to the bottom as far as like the craft within cinema, as far as like what's really getting a lot of money, given like the big stakes in Hollywood or whatever. So how do you find hope as a filmmaker for this medium in the new kind of digital world where algorithms and data metrics and models of analytics of performance seem to be driving what gets done?
For me, I think I don't even go into making a film with analytics, with intentions, with none of that type of stuff. I'm on the story. What does my character want? What is their objective? What are they trying to achieve? What's in their way? And I'm focused on the story. And I'm so dedicated to the art and the craft of the form that I trust my product will be so good, people will gravitate towards it. And that might be naivety, but at the same time, I feel if I let analytics, if I say, am I making something that I feel like people, I mean, you want to make films that are entertaining for sure. I think that's the baseline of why you do it. You want it to entertain, but if you start fan servicing too much and I think that's how you get into cookie cutter films. I think that's how you get into bad films that tank. I think you're well safe if you're making films that don't cost a lot of money to make, like a horror film, and has a potential for a huge upside versus saying, okay, the fans say they need exploding cars. The films that have exploding cars, the analytics show that they do better. So we have to add this exploding car. And it's like, well, no, you don't. So it's just, and if you feel like you do, well, let's find a better way to do it. So I think the more you discipline and get in tune with your craft, you'll find ways to circumvent the roadblocks of quote unquote analytics or the algorithm. A good film is a good film. It's timeless. You know what I mean? I still watch Kurosawa films to this day and them black and white joints. So it's just like good films will last. Your film might not pop today. It's not like music. So you might drop a film and people might not catch on for a few months, for a few years. You know what I mean? But it's the long game. So as you continue to make films, people are going to go back and watch your old work. So, yeah.
I mean, if it's something that you're proud of, it'll show. Other people will see it. I helped to produce a short film, like we wrapped in 2019, but last year we won Best of State for in this one film festival, and it was something that like I'd all but like forgotten about it, but it's just like I'm really proud of this, this project that I accomplished. It was a fun little all silent short, but we put a lot of work into like it in post. It took a little bit to do, but it was there, and like people can still find it. And I think it's not I didn't do it to be popular. I did it because I wanted other people to see this one short, this one story, this one that I guarantee that like nobody had ever really thought of before, but it needed to be this like beautiful vision, and like it just goes to show it fucking won. And I was just so, thank you. And I was just so proud that it was made with the intention of just making this story so that other people can share it. And now if you do want to just stay like, I guess, be more like contemporary about it, just be like exceptional. Just be like, no, I want to scare you. Like, no, I want to freak you out. Like, I want to make you squirm. And just know that it's like, no, that is my goal. Like, you will find your voice in that. And I mean, don't stop. Like, who the hell cares? Like, if somebody else got to like release a film right before yours, like, it's just really discouraging for you to compare your successes against someone else's. You don't know what they're going through. Their dad was probably a producer for Disney. Their mom has an Emmy, like they have all the time, resources, support, encouragement behind them to do that. Like, I never had that. I wanted to be an actor, and my parents said no. And I was like, but I really want to do that. They're like, no, do something else. And I mean, I kind of left now because like, well, they said no, but it didn't work. And I still found my way onto a film set. I still found my way onto like to direct like a commercial. Like a friend of mine got recognized for a commercial that I directed, and I can't wait I told my parents don't really, they're confused by what I do, but like I definitely like take the time to call them and be like, Dad, guess what I fucking did, and let me show you a photo. Like I'm just so proud of it. And I didn't have anybody standing behind me to say like, oh my God, you're gonna do that. I'm so proud of you. But like, I got used to that. I don't make something so that somebody can say you did a good job. I did it so that I can say like, oh my God, look at this. It's a landmark. It's historic for me. And I did that. And I think as long as you do it, knowing that you wanted to do that and people see it and they recognize like, holy shit, you did that. Good for you. Like, I just think that it's a personal milestone for yourself and that you should just be proud that it got pushed forward. And who the fuck cares if the person next door did it also? Like, they're not you. That wasn't, they didn't make your story. You're going to. And that's that.
I'll just say, like, I'm a big believer that limitation inspires creativity. So you put me in a box, you tell me all the things that I can't do. I know what I want to say, and now I'm going to spend my time figuring out how to say it. So for all of those algorithmic limitations, for all of like, I need a celebrity to tell me to do this. Like, well, my challenge is one, a sales pitch. So if I can't do that, I'm going to find somebody else who's really good at selling shit and get them in there to like tell the person who has the money all the things that they need to hear, couch it however they want. And then once the check's signed, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want. And then there'll be a battle there and we'll go back and forth quite a bit. And hopefully I still have that like smooth talking individual to go in there and be able to fight on my behalf. But that's a lot of it. Just because they're doing that doesn't mean that there aren't ways for you to let your art shine. And sometimes, like we were saying before, sometimes it's your art versus your craft, and your craft can still, have a lot of art to it. It's just like you watch those big explosion movies and it's just like, that shit ain't easy. It's really, really hard to make that shit work and do it well. I was like watching something about how like the Batman and like how difficult some of those shots were. And I know people who hate that movie and I know people who love that movie, but you know what? Like craft wise, it was hard. A lot of that shit was hard. So I think it's just a matter of looking at it like that. I know, I'll just leave it at that. I think that just look at those limitations or as opportunities for you to create something that's never existed before, because there was never a need for it before.
I just want to add, like, it's also about like where you want to find your return on investment. Like, I think that, if you're fighting the algorithm, the explosions, the captivating traumas and pain, then that's primarily online, and that's primarily like the mainstream funding machine. But if you want to make something that's outside of that box, those brick and mortar theaters, again, are going to be the spot for you. That I feel like that's an opportunity. And it's not even the independent theaters themselves. It may be that community institution. It may be, that particular space that speaks to the message or the core themes of whatever you're putting out there. Because, a film doesn't have to be screened in a theater, but if you bring your film to the captive audience, then you're gonna get much richer feedback and insight and maybe even investment and support on what it is that you're trying to do, instead of putting it into the other where you already know what forces are working against it and how powerful they really are. So really be elastic about like who is this film for? And maybe it's not for the biggest audience possible. I think it's important, like, I think a nice through line that everybody's mentioned is that you've got to reach for the sky. You've got to find every piece of the puzzle while you're also crafting your vision, while you're also crafting your craft, to be able to get your vision where you want it to be. But also just consider all of what's right in front of you. Your community is here, and surely someone around here, someone's hopefully vibe with what you're putting out and understand why you want to bring your vision to the masses one way or another. And I think we have time for one more question.
Well, quickly, if you develop an audience, you just added more leverage to get more funding, to get more distribution. Finding out your audience, I think, is key. I think finding out, I think that's that's really key right there. I think a lot of people don't know, as far as musicians, filmmakers, who is my audience. So it might take you a few films, it might take you a few misses to figure out, okay, like my audience isn't as big as I thought, or maybe my audience is closer than I thought. So, and I think finding ways to cleverly tap into your audience and make films for them and getting it to them and just having that grow and keep feeding them and find ways to where you can go direct to consumer, you know what I mean, and cut out the distribution. If you can have a website and you have 10,000 audiences, fans, in America, and that they'll pay $10, $20 for your film, like that's a lot of money right there, you know. So why go through a distribution if you got that many amount of fans? So I think that should be paramount for a filmmaker, is putting yourself out there like a musician, like an actor, and saying, hey, I'm a filmmaker with a vision, follow me, this is the projects I'm working on, this is how you can fund them, this is how you can help. So.
Sure. I'd say just find your support system as well. Like he was mentioning, like you will find fans that like what you're doing, or you know, and you'll find critics that say like, I like this element, like can you explore that further? But just knowing that they're there, they're present. I mean, I don't necessarily like write things for other people. I just write them, or I just write them because it's like I still want to just share this story. I know somebody's going to relate to it. This is why for me, my audience, a lot of them are like Chicano or Latino individuals, but it's more so like that tax bracket of like people, which is like way wider than like just Latino or Chicano. It's just like they're there, and you just have to like make your voice known. You just have to share what you have, and you'll see like you'll get like all sorts of support and like all kinds of like background saying like, I know exactly what this is like believe it or not, like yes I do. And then you'll from there like you will see like you'll develop that audience, and then but I think in that you'll develop your voice. You'll just get stronger. Your storytelling is just going to get that much more meaningful. You'll know, like a scene, like how you set up a shot, how you light it, like your voice will just be like undeniable. And that only happens by creating it, by sharing it, and then doing it again. And then it just becomes a signature. But start with one, and then it just follows.
Yeah, audience will get you a lot of buying power. There's just no question about it. That's what everyone's looking for. So if you can walk into like one of those like smaller, those like little fast platforms that I was talking about, and you could say like you set up your own website, you have 10,000 people who are regularly visiting, to 10,000 unique viewers, and like you go to them and you say like, hey, here's my film, and here is first party data that came to my website. I know who they are. You're going to want to do this because they're going to want to watch it on here, right? I mean, there's like no better example of someone who built audience and created, an empire than Tyler Perry. Like that, like he's just like the king, hands down, period. And like he's worth over $1 billion now because he built an audience. He catered to that audience. He knew who he's speaking to, and he created really great content. And then he continued to build. He built in the community. He built studios, and he could go, and he doesn't just have to do media. He's doing everything, He's just like, but it starts with the audience. It definitely starts with the audience. I'm separating this from the art right now. I'm only addressing that part. The art stands alone. Everything that they said is completely true. So you're going to have to navigate that. Like, how do I build audience in a way that is sincere? Because it's very easy to just like get into your whole marketing game and be like what I was talking about, manipulating the buyers. Like, we do want to manipulate the buyers. We don't want to manipulate our core audience. So like being able to like, you know, dissect yourself into as many pieces as you need to stay true as an artist, to be a good business person, because make no mistakes, if you're a filmmaker, you are an entrepreneur and you need to do all of it.
I'll just say that I'm only chiming in to say that what you're talking about is the conversation in the indie art house world right now, is that these small brick and mortar theaters traditionally have been programming almost exclusively for older white folks, because they know that they're their main funders. And so it creates this self-fulfilling prophecy where that is all that they're catering to. So I would also encourage you to, again, take hold of all of this info, but also demand from your local institutions, like, that they help craft that audience. Because like, they just aren't doing even a somewhat decent job of creating an audience of Black or brown or anything in between people. They're just not doing a good job of that. So like, find your local curators, and maybe even at museums, they're just as likely, or that much more likely even, to look at your work and say like, who do you want to reach with this, and who else do you know who is making work like this or even adjacent to this, and how can we create a program that speaks to these people, and where do we show that program? You know, where, if it's not in the theater because they're not, you know, financially motivated to do so, you know, where is the institution, where are the walls, even if there aren't walls, you know, what spot of land speaks to this conversation? And really, I feel like that brings film beyond that passive space and can make the experience much more active and really fascinating, especially if you end up in a community that just isn't catered to by institutions as a whole, outside of like your standard resources, that because these communities have been so neglected. So again, like, and I don't know, I'm like a broken record on this, but I'm just seeing it from an exhibition point of view, which is very like land, brick and mortar kind of thing. And it seems like it's part of the past, but I know that it can very well be a part of, you know, cultivating everybody who's kind of at the bottom towards the future. So definitely consider that. And that goes for everybody in the room. Demand better from, you know, every piece of the puzzle, from the buyers, distributors, you know, producers, and local institutions. But with that, we've gone plenty over. Thank you all for sticking with us. Thank you to our panel. Please give them a round of applause. And thanks for Spark Summit for making this happen.